guys enjoy the movie? Yeah! Oh, man. I'm like 30% of you guys like it. All right.
So we all just saw the movie. Excellent, beautiful movie. Excellent performance. Mike, as your second film, especially coming off something that was so acclaimed as Another Earth, what kind of pressures were there on you to make a movie, especially at this scope and depth and something so much bigger than Another Earth?
Thanks. I didn't really think of the pressures, I guess, in terms of comparison. It was really just another story that I was really excited to tell. And I wasn't sure what my next project was going to be after Another Earth, and it wasn't until I met Michael at a meeting in Brooklyn, and at a general meeting, and I was so taken by him. So I had known his work and really admired him for a long time. But we sat down for a general meeting and started chatting, and in the middle of the meeting, I told him the idea for Origins, for which I only had a short synopsis, really. And he said, that's a really great idea. You should spend some time on it. And right after that, I started writing the script. And 2 weeks later, I showed him the first draft, and we started working together.
Did you have this same ending in that first draft? Did you always know how it was going to end?
I was like looking and see what it was.
I don't know what I'm pointing at.
No, it was a little bit different.
Were you thinking in all that because so many people ask you about the ending of Another Earth to come up with another sort of, so much ambiguous but very debatable ending that you'd have to answer questions for another 3 years?
Someone just started, we just did an interview yesterday, or someone was like, okay, first, explain the ending to Another Earth. But I don't know, I don't think it's that ambiguous, but also I kind of think, I love films where the audience gets to participate in the meaning of it. You get to put yourself in there. But I do think there is a full character arc, and you experience that when Ian is looking into the little girl's eyes, and you feel this person is changed.
Michael, in your career, you've played quite a few oddballs, some bizarre characters. Was it kind of refreshing to play a guy who is normal-ish?
Is this guy normal?
You tell me.
I don't know, man. I just got off a plane, like literally. I'm happy to be here. What's the question?
Was it refreshing to play a character that's a little bit different than
Yes, it was. It actually, one of the, I try to pick different characters. A lot of times in Hollywood, they want you to do what you've done. They want you to keep, that's all they can see you as. And so I was really interested in playing this character. And yes, definitely playing this type of character, because I have been very often asked to go to very dark places in my work. So it was refreshing to play a scientist.
Well, I don't want to take up all the time because I know we have some questions out here. So, who wants to go first? You, sir.
You've probably been asked this a lot of times, but why eyes? Like, where did the idea of eyes come from?
A few different places, but I remember I saw that, I used to read National Geographic as a little kid, and I remember the June 1985 cover was that famous Afghan girl with those striking green eyes. And there's an interesting story behind that. I was taken by this photographer, Steve McCurry, and he took it at a refugee camp in Pakistan, Afghanistan, on the border. And he didn't know what the girl's name. She came in, he snapped a photograph, and off she went. And so he didn't know her name or who she was. And later, obviously, that photograph became very famous and iconic. And every day for many, many years, he would get letters saying, who is this person, who is this person? And 17 years after taking that photograph, he went to go try and find her. But they didn't know what she looked like. They could only sort of guess maybe what she would look like. But they knew her eyes, her very specific eyes. And this is when I started to learn about iris biometrics and the fact that all eyes are unique, that your eyes form when you're in your mother's womb and they stay the same for your entire life. They're the only organ that doesn't change, and they're visible from the outside, but it's an internal organ. And then I learned about biometrics, which is actually more common than you think. When you go through the fast line in the airport, you get your eyes scanned. If anyone's arrested, their eyes are scanned. Babies in hospitals are scanned. And then there's this massive program in India where they're scanning citizens' eyes. And so I became interested and was doing a lot of research on the eyes, and then also was thinking about how I was 2 summers ago, I was in this, or 3 summers ago, I guess it was, I was with my wife on a small island in the Adriatic Sea called Brioni, and there's these beautiful ruins, Roman ruins, by the water, and along the water are these rocks, and there's these dinosaur footprints. And it's an interesting place because you can snap photos of the ruins and snap photos of dinosaur footprints, and I was looking at the two of them, and they're right next to each other. And I was thinking how strange and peculiar this is that this civilization had risen and fallen, and they didn't discover dinosaurs. They didn't even know what dinosaurs were. And there were certainly myths and stories of big monsters perhaps, but paleontology began in like the 1800s. So I was thinking, what is our civilization's dinosaur footprints? What's right in front of our noses that we don't realize the greater significance of? And then this narrative of the eyes kind of emerged.
You couldn't have picked a more difficult thing to write a movie about. I'm sure you can't just fake knowing about biometrics and eyes.
You can.
Oh, okay, sorry. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What genre would we put this under?
What do you think?
Science and a little,
A little bit of this and a little bit of that.
maybe religion, I don't know, something else.
I mean, I think I call it sci, comma, fi. As opposed to sci dash fi.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Someone got that.
You, this?
Hi.
Hi. So
Hi,
this is.
how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Oh, great.
This is my.
What's your name?
My name's Karen.
Hi, Karen. I'm Mike. This is Michael.
Michael. Nice to meet you for the second time.
Nice to re-meet you.
Yeah, I was in New York and I saw.
The second time.
I was in New York.
Oh, I thought you were someone else. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just me. And
All right, this is the dangerous conversation.
okay, so anyway, so this is my second viewing, and I picked
great.
up a lot more this time. The first time I was a little distracted because I had some artwork I really wanted signed, and now this is, I noticed so much more, so many little details I didn't notice in the first time. It was really amazing how everything kind of came together, and things were like hitting me like wow, oh my God, whoa, it was really neat. And then I just wanted to comment on the grief sequence was really interesting to me because it's like it started with, an elevator and she dies and then he's screaming and then it cuts to silent.
Right.
And then like it goes through all these steps, and he shows all the grief he's going through and everything. And then at the last part of that sequence, when he breaks the chopsticks, it was like you could just see there was no strength left in his hands to break those chopsticks, and it was just like, okay, I accept this death. And I just thought that was such a fantastic sequence from beginning to end.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Mike was tremendous in the movie and the whole movie, and that sequence in particular is really, it's amazing how that works towards the service of his character later, because he really suppresses these things, and when the trauma occurs, it goes to silence, as you pointed out. And I was reading about trauma and how we experience trauma, and one of the things is a disassociation with senses, particularly sound. So if you've been in a car accident, perhaps, and things feel sort of slow motion, there's like a lack of sound that often occurs. And that's when things get really embedded into your unconscious mind through trauma. And how does he deal with this? He goes to the laboratory and has very easy access to morphine, and he takes this morphine and sort of experiences this numbing period. And Michael does this so brilliantly. He suppresses all of that, and his later, as Ian is a much older man, you get the sense, and this is his work doing this, that he hasn't been able to fully grieve. And so, yeah, it's one of the performances. Thanks for pointing that out. Hey.
Hi. The part where he says, you know, she was just a child and I really didn't think it would work. Was that a lie, or was that in the mix?
I didn't play it as a lie. I played it as something that he meant. It was, you know, it was really important that it didn't seem like he was settling for the Karen character. It was perhaps a doomed relationship, but he didn't have closure, you know, and that can be pretty intense.
Michael, you are in every scene of this movie. What kind of challenges does that present as an actor, and Mike as the director? How do you sort of take that pressure off him, if at all?
Well, I mean, the most obvious challenge is just sleep, you know, just getting sleep. But I'd much rather have that problem than be sitting around, you know.
I mean, I love when movies are very much in the singular person's point of view, and to do that, it often requires that person being on screen for a lot of it. But it's true that we, you know, forge ourselves with the protagonist as an audience. We really sort of meld with him, and hopefully that has an impact when we get to him.
Question back there.
Hi, I just wanted to ask,
Hi.
what was your inspiration for the Sophie character? That was kind of strange how they met and then got along, because it's kind of like that's experience or.
Oh, is that like a past, like a real life thing?
Yeah, I mean, the train thing was kind of crazy, and
That you guys should come to New York. That's what it's like. Everybody like meets that way at Halloween parties. Yeah. She wasn't necessarily based on somebody, but I often like to think of her as a flip side of the same coin that Karen is. Like Sophie, you know, she has one toe on the ground and she's head in the clouds and has this sort of very wild, beautiful, reckless, spiritual intuition. But I think when she comes into the laboratory and she talks about the worms and she uses the work that Ian is doing in the laboratory to serve as an analogy for her point of view, we really understand her wisdom and her three-dimensionality as a character. She's not just sort of flights of fancy ideas about the spirit world. It's actually quite grounded and intuitive, her understanding. And the idea that we're similar to these two sensed worms, you know, if it's possible, and that's based on a real scientific experiment, which is crazy, that you can modify a worm to give it sight. That means that realm, that whole dimension was unavailable to it. It couldn't articulate it, it couldn't understand it, it couldn't grapple with it, and yet we know very, very clearly that light exists all around it and indirectly affects the world of the worms. And so it follows that five senses are not the limit by any means, and the imperative suggests that there must be another dimension, something on top of us.
Yes, sir. Right here.
is there any point or scenes that were taken out of the movie you wish were left in the movie?
Not for me, but there were, I mean, how should I say that? There are amazing, incredible moments.
Maybe,
What's that?
like different takes, like
Yeah.
this way and then another version of it. Because some
Yes.
like to shoot different versions of the reaction. Different reactions.
We shot a lot. We definitely, you know, Mike was really great about letting us play, you know, letting the actors play. And so there was a lot of amazing things that were captured. But that being said, the cut is solid. So it's a little difficult to picture it any way else.
Yeah, but there are, I mean, the thing I can say about Michael too, which is really fascinating to watch from a director's point of view is that when you do 10 takes with him, those 10 takes are authentic. They're not false. He's like a very, very powerfully tuned instrument. And it's so impressive to watch because, it's not like false note, false note, false note, oh, he hit it. It's like authentic with subtext of anger, authentic with subtext of generosity, authentic with, preparing for a reversal. And it's really tremendous to see. And so it's it makes my job easier and then also more difficult because there's such nuance that he delivers in a performance that you don't want to miss any of those great gems.
Yes, sir.
So, first, John Thomas, I'm with rollingout.com.
Hi, how are you, John?
Hey, good, great work.
Where are you from? Rowing?
Rollingout.com.
Rollingout.com, cool.
Yeah, it's one of the largest publications of African Americans.
Excellent. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem. I almost didn't make it in, so I just wanted to thank you for putting this together. I think where I want to ask is, you've touched on several different topics that could be very heated on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
You have science and you have religion, both playing together, almost like, in a dance.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other movies that have gone 99% one way, 1% the other. So how do you see this film really landing out in the public's eye, based on the way that we pretty much kind of target our listening to religion and also science?
Well, from my point of view, at least I think it exists in the film. I have an incredible amount of respect and admiration for scientists, and I have an incredible amount of respect for believers and those of faith. Equal hands, and so there's no sort of sinister or cynical kind of approach. The movie in many ways has tries to make each side of that supposed war that's gone on, and actually a real war. I mean, science and spirituality has collided since Galileo, and still collides now with what can be taught in schools. But I don't think they necessarily need to collide, and I think this movie sort of, hopefully handles both with a great amount of positivity.
It did. How do you follow this up now?
How do I follow this up?
Yeah.
I'm going to Barbados and what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I'm not the only one sitting here in the audience left wanting, there's a whole storyline that started the minute that cab pulled up.
Uh-huh.
So, is this the beginning of something, or do you see this was this just a standalone movie that we should just,
it could be the beginning of something.
Great.
We also saw a very interesting stinger there after the credits, where it looks like we'll be catching up with the present-day versions of historical characters, perhaps.
Indeed.
In a TV series, maybe.
That's our Marvel ending there.
Way in back.
Awesome.
What's up, guys?
Hey, man.
Are there any theoretical, theological, or philosophical papers, thinkers, articles, or whatever that shape this narrative? And did you use any of those, maybe given to Michael, to kind of help him perform in a certain way that you wanted?
Someone that Mike turned me on to, I think initially it might have just been to get my head around evolution and in particular evolution was Richard Dawkins, and then he's a scientist, sort of the leading scientist, atheist, and so I watched a lot of his lectures, which are amazing. I would really suggest watching them, but he's a bit provocative. He's certainly trying to provoke that debate between spirituality and science. So that was someone that I remember saying to Mike, if Ian Gray had similar beliefs as this scientist, because he's so adamant about science, and I believe it really truly comes from his love of education, his love of science, and he wants to see it move forward. And throughout history, it has been. There have been times where they've been trying to hold it back, but he is, that's what he thinks, and he's damn smart, and it's really hard to debate otherwise. But what I said to Mike was, if Ian Gray was a character with beliefs like this, if we could shake the tree of a character like Dawkins and make him think about spirituality, that it might be interesting to watch. And so we took parts of that. There's also a book by the Dalai Lama that I keep forgetting the title.
Universe in a Single Atom.
Yeah, I would really suggest reading that book, because that's a spiritual leader, whether or not those are your beliefs or not. But he's a spiritual leader who is a scientist and who loves science, and he's not threatened by science, and that's really inspiring, and almost it almost reinforces his faith, because he is not threatened by science or by science moving forward. Those were two things that certainly informed my character.
Beyond touching on the spirituality and themes of afterlife and rebirth, there's also little elements of luck and maybe fate in there. Ian Gray remarks at one point that it's must be his lucky day after he sees the 11s, and other elements like that. Was it your point to point out that maybe these aren't mutually exclusive? Afterlife, the spirituality, luck, all of that?
Right. Yes. I mean, yes. Indeed.
That's exactly what I was doing.
Indeed.
Is it one or nothing?
Well, I mean, it's a sense that that is part of the realm that we can't see. That is the light on the worms. That's the sound on the worms. That it's poking its head indirectly into our lives. And that's sort of a leitmotif that exists throughout the entire film. When she says, the door through the light, and the final shot going through the door through the light. That sort of extra sensorial way of interacting with the mutants, that kind of idea was woven.
There's a lot of those little things really embedded in this movie, and that's such a great thing to hear when you said that you noticed all these different things, because there's so much in there that pertains to everything without the throughout the movie.
Questions? Right here.
How are you doing? You okay? What's wrong?
Because there are some things that you give us as a head with it, and other things really subtle. But the numbers at the end are bothering.
What numbers?
Okay. So the picture, she has 44% right, but it only went through 25 of the letter. So that's 11.
44, right. 11 out of 25 is 44%.
You meant to do that. Of course you did, right? Because of all of the
Because of the 11s in the beginning, it's 11 at the end as well.
Yes. Actually, I have to be honest. This is one of those things I would totally, in like any other circumstance, be like, yeah, totally, I thought of that. But I didn't think of that. I really sincerely did not think of that. That's a coincidence.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's amazing.
What are you saying?
I'm just saying that was such an obvious thing to wrap up the whole thing at the end.
It was my idea.
Wait, it was so obvious. Wait, what is it? Can someone do a calculation really quick? What is 11 divided by 25? Is that 44? 44.
Karen said, not a match, 4%.
You're a genius.
I don't know. That sounds like that's weird. The
Of
hair.
course I thought of that. That was a thought from the beginning. Sorry, I've been playing.
Where's Sophia? She knows.
Yeah.
The spiritual world.
I see. Question.
That's brilliant. You are brilliant. You really are. Are you a scientist or a mathematician?
I'm a writer and an accountant.
Oh, you're an accountant?
Back there?
And
Yeah.
a writer. That's awesome.
Indian culture and their religion, as opposed to any other religion or like belief in reincarnation. What made you
We put a bunch of religions in a hat and mixed it up. Threw it up in the air. That's what
Well, actually, in the movie, reincarnation, the word reincarnation does not exist, not once. It doesn't come up. There is that moment when he's trying to explain to Sophie the desire to hold on to her, and he says, you know, I would clone you, I would reanimate you, I would reconstitute you. He says every re-word without saying that. And that was actually very purposeful, because, you know, a lot of spiritual terms have embedded with them a whole history of baggage and ideas and thought behind it. And even when Karen says the word soul, he like leaps out like how can you use, like, seriously, are you gonna use this word? So we tried to stray away from any particular religion on purpose, but the reason we chose India more than anything was because it's the, well, of course, yes, it's true, the idea of the transmigration of some entity inside of us is a fundamental belief there. But more importantly, for plausibility, India does have a national eye scanning program. It's the only country in the entire world where all of its citizens' eyes are registered in a national database. And so, like, all of that science and technology stuff is based on real stuff. That's a CNN report. That's legit. And they go up from community center to community center where all these kids are, and they scan the eyes. So it's plausible that, you know, a 7-year-old kid would have their eyes scanned.
One of the really interesting things that we haven't touched on that I found fascinating was that Astrid, the actress who plays Sophie, those are her real eyes. There was no trickery done to that. Those are her actual eyes.
Those are her real eyes.
And Michael, is it true that you just discovered her, or you helped in the casting process?
I don't know if I discovered her. I met her in London, and we were. Mike was going through sort of a list of actors, and he wasn't happy with the people that he was meeting, and so for some reason I was thinking that they should meet, thinking that they would connect, and then her name came up on a list. I didn't want to push too hard though, because I knew it had to be right. You know, he was only going to go with the right person. But there was a moment on set after, because I didn't really know her, and so there's always this possibility, I guess. You know, I hope it works.
All right, yeah.
And there was a moment on set where I remember we just like high-fived each other after she did a scene, and we were like, "This is gonna work.
Yeah.
This is gonna work great."
Her English was rusty at first.
I mean,
Really?
It was pretty good.
Not in the movie, but that's what I've read.
Yeah, I mean, she says that, but she is quite talented in English, and she's a phenomenal actress. So
She speaks like 5 languages.
Any more questions? Right here, sir.
As someone who wants to be a great actor, a great director, is there any piece of advice you could give me? Like, what makes you guys work so hard to
Get out now while you still can.
Yes, what's for advice for a great actor and director?
I can tell you from a director's point of view, I admire actors, but I have not a shred of idea of how they do the brilliance that they do. But in terms of directing, I would say find people that you love, that are passionate about what you're doing, and the movie that you're going to make a movie about, make it something that's absolutely deeply meaningful to you. Not something that's just clever. It has to be profoundly affecting you, because it's so much work, and it's years. It's like 2 years in the making, and you'll want to quit a million times. And it's only if the thing is powerful enough and meaningful enough to you will you slug it all the way through. That's what I would say.